Welcome to the Wealth Radar podcast, where we scan the landscape and navigate the noise of investing and personal wealth. I'm Paul Fowler, joined by my brother Jason. We're certified financial planners from Fowler's Group, and in this episode, we are joined by a woman that wears many hats, the CEO of Dawsons Engineering, Sharon Dawson. Welcome, Sharon, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Hey, Sharon, it's good to hear. He's pinched it. I actually said the lady who's got more roles than Julia Roberts, but he wouldn't go with it.
No, I thought that was a setup. So I stayed away.
So I'm really looking forward to having this chat around the microphone other than over a coffee.
I was thinking 31, close to my age.
Yeah, right. Smack bang. It's perfect, right? And looking forward to hearing the journey about the extremely successful Dawsons Engineering, where that's gone, working in a family business. And also we'll touch on all the other things that you managed to fit into your busy life. But I don't know, where do we start? So North Queensland girl, grown up, and then I suppose you were tinkering around with, mum and dad were tinkering around with stuff, and then you went off to uni with no intention of being in the family business?
The family business was so small, so it was really just dad and a couple of mates. When I went off to uni, there was no family business. They were just little subbies. Mum and dad working hard. They were actually out at Crystal Cascades being pawpaw farmers.
Pawpaw farmers?
Pawpaw farmers.
Wow.
Yeah. Dad's a Boilermaker by trade, and they had followed the work up and down the sugar mills.
Yep.
So we'd lived in Townsville for a fair bit of my primary school, then Mackay, and he had a bad industrial accident. He was he was a really young foreman on a sugar mill job in Mackay, and I can't remember how old he would have been, not very old, early 30s, maybe mid-30s, early 30s. And the job that he was working on, they had a bit of steel come down and it knocked Dad and one of his workers off the steel that they were standing on, and they fell a couple of floors. So really lucky that neither of them died.
Wow, yeah.
And it was probably the first of one of Dad's many midlife crises, and he decided that he and Mum...
many of them.
He decided they were coming back to Cairns and they were going to be shopkeepers.
Right.
So when we landed back in Cairns, we landed at Redlinch, and they sold everything that they owned and then borrowed money as much as they could off the institutions and then off family to buy into the shop at Redlinch.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so was that, when did Zan's, were you living out sort of up the valley?
We were living behind the shop.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
right there
What was the shop,
pub.
Sharon?
Yeah,
What was
the shop opposite the pub.
Yeah, the main general store, right?
God.
Yeah.
Near the post office.
Yeah, we had the post office as well. So, yeah, we lived, there was 3 bedrooms in an old cane barracks behind the shop, and we lived there.
Wow.
So, and then Dad being Dad, he got bored fairly quickly and left Mum to run the shop while he started doing jobs mainly for cash and for beer.
Well, just important.
Perfect. That's my man.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've met Keith, but yeah, he's your kind of...
Yeah,
wow.
so that's how they started. And when they sold the shop and we moved up to Zanzu, he was still just running around, with a ute doing cashies while they were essentially pink pawpaw farmers.
Wow.
Mum was working 2 jobs, and so by the time I went to uni, they were really only just fabbing stuff up in the farm shed. So he started, while they were still doing pawpaws, he started doing some work out at Kidston Gold Mine.
Yep.
And he had a couple of mates, and they'd fab things up in the shed, drive them out to site, do the installations around the shutdown cycle. And, there was no family business for me to go into. The extent of it was that I would come home from uni holidays and I'd be doing steel deliveries.
I was going to say, were you the truck driver?
Yep.
Driving the ute?
Yeah, they worked out pretty quickly because it was a fair way out. Crystal Cascades, long way to go.
And back in those days, it was miles or one lane, basically. Almost.
It was one lane with dirt on either side.
Yep.
So they worked out fairly quickly that it was better productivity for them to send me into town to do the pickups than to send a tradie.
Yeah, because they could be doing work.
Exactly. So they send me into town to do all the pickups, and the other benefit they got was that if I went and got the steel, the nice blokes at Tonkin would load it and tie it down for me. If they sent a tradie, he would have to do all of the
All the
loading.
female card nice and early, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, there was no intention at all of me. Yep. There was no family business to come into. There was no intention. I went off to uni to go and do whatever.
Yeah, so you did an arts degree, right?
What did I read about you possibly doing a diesel fitting apprenticeship?
Yeah, so
where's that come from?
Again, this is many years later, and
okay, sorry.
There's probably a fair bit that I need to thank. Well, there's always a fair bit that you need to thank your parents for.
Yep.
But turns out that my dad was an accidental feminist, I reckon.
Right.
Because he just, from a very young age, there was nothing that I was not expected to do.
Yeah, you and Wes in the same bucket.
Yep. Do the fencing, help out, do the deliveries, all that kind of stuff. And so when eventually he did tell me, it's time for you to stop. You got that bleeper button ready?
We'll mark it.
Yeah.
Let it go. Post it.
It's time for you to stop, messing around. Effing around, and get back here and help in the family business. And that was late 99. And
so at that point, you'd been to uni, you'd done an arts degree, dip teach.
Yep.
So what were you doing? Where were you when he said that?
I was in Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah. So at the same time, actually, that Mum and Dad were getting set up and really starting to get some momentum with shutdown crews, I was living in London.
Okay.
And I was doing recruitment and labour hire for teachers in London.
Ah, okay.
And at the same time as Mum was doing labour hire, and it was unheard of back then. We didn't even, in Australia, have a name for it. This was in 92, 93. And I can remember on one of the phone calls to Mum saying, I'm doing what you're doing for Boilermakers. I'm doing it for teachers. It's called labour hire. So I did that for a couple of years in London, and then I came back to Australia, and the company that I was working for was a fantastic company, and this was way when Australian teachers in London were still relatively new.
Yep.
Pre-internet, of course, and they gave me a contract and flew me back to Australia and said, find us 100 teachers. So I travelled around Australia I had 3 months to recruit 100 teachers.
Yep.
So I travelled around Australia speaking at universities and, just having town hall kind of things, advertised in the paper. Come along.
Back in the old school days.
Roll up.
Letter drops.
Yeah. Fax me your resume.
Fax. Some people don't even know what those are.
Yeah. And then went back around again, interviewed, reference checked, and then mailed over 100 teachers. And for all intents and purposes, I was headed back to London.
Yep.
To continue on that kind of trajectory, and my boyfriend at the time decided, I'm staying. And I went, what will I do? Another 2 years in London or come back here. And as it was just one of those sliding doors moments, I'm sitting there talking with my uncle who was Great Adventures.
Yeah.
That was their family business, Reg. So he was great adventuring, and there was an ad in the paper for one of the local tour companies looking for a local sales rep, and that was your mate James Dixon.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, maybe I'll apply for this job. And my uncle said, they're really nice blokes. That's a good company. That'd be a good company. And I thought, well, you know what? If I get this job, I'll stay. And I applied for the job, and it hadn't closed. It had another 2 weeks. It had only just been advertised, and I was due to fly back to London the following, 7 days hence.
Yep.
So I rang him up and said, listen, I don't want to be too forward, but about this job I'm really keen, and I've got to decide whether or not I'm going back to London. So could I come in and talk to somebody about it?
What's going on here?
Yeah, I know. So Gordo and the other manager there, JP, interviewed me, and then they said, we can't make a decision because James needs to make the decision, and he'll phone you. I was like, yeah, okay. I spoke to him on the phone, and James is quite intimidating sometimes with that big voice.
Yeah, the big boom. It's a great voice, yeah.
Yeah, and he just said, big interview, the grill. And he said, well, I'm going to do something I've never done before, and I'll offer you the job over the phone, but you better be good.
You could just imagine him saying it, right? Wow. So that's what you stayed for a sales rep job at Down Under.
Yeah, and then went and did a little bit of time with Quicksilver.
Yep.
Before I moved to Sydney, and I was in Sydney when Dad made the call and said, oi,
time to come back.
Time to come back. And he was adamant when I came back that I couldn't work in the business unless I had a trade. And he's like, you need to do a trade. And I was 29. I'm like, I'm not doing a trade. I'm not doing a trade, Dad. And Mum backed me. No. So I started on labour hire.
Okay.
And
so,
it was a much smaller company back then too.
Yeah,
It was still small. It was really small.
So when you were doing labour hire back there, what sort of numbers were you doing? Was it predominantly labour hiring and still some fab? Was that?
Still doing fab. So we were in the process of building our workshop in Greenbank Road. So we had 2 workshops in Greenbank Road on the southern side of Greenbank Road, and we were building the big shed on the northern side when I came back, and we were transitioning as a company where Kidston, Placerdome, was the main client in the mining sector, and they were on the close down. And we were still doing a lot of work in Cairns. So NQEA was still firing, QMI as it was back then, the NQEA slipway was still firing. Dad was still doing a lot of work in the sugar mills. The sugar industry was going. They had projects on at Collinsville Power Station. So they had, at the time, there was good numbers, but nowhere near the scale and the size that it is now.
But at that point in time, Sharon, with the labour hire part of the business and I guess the manufacturing, what was the percent? Was it like a 50-50 or was it more manufacturing then than labour hire? When was the
still 50-50.
transition? Okay. So how did you? I know you did the labour hire over in England. Your mum was doing a little bit. How did they actually get into the labour hire side? But how did that start from the manufacturing?
Yeah, well, so it was way back when they were up at Zanzu doing the pawpaw farming. Was that the mine, Kidston, was saying to Dad, look, can you come in during this shutdown and, can you bring a couple of mates? We'll need 6 of you. So he would go, right, okay, we'll need 6 of you. Find 6 blokes. And so when Mum started it back then, that was what it was born out of, was the shutdowns. And so they would have a mill shutdown every 6 weeks and a crusher shutdown every 4 weeks. Right. Mill shutdown would be up to 120 guys.
Okay.
Crusher shutdown, 60 guys. And so, for Mum to be working that, and she was
unreal.
She was doing it by herself with a little doctor's card system.
Oh, yeah, the old Rolodex.
Yeah. She had all the blokes' names and their wives' names, and it was all landlines. And, she would, on occasion, have to go and grab the guys out of the pub, ring the pub. Is he there? He's got to get on a plane at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Right. So at what point, I mean, obviously on the roll, it was a crew that she was trolling through. At what point did that become these guys we just start sending, they became...
That was just the most beautiful part of it back then, was that it was, and it still is actually, we're up to... I think our pay numbers are now around 11,000. That's how many people we've employed over the time. But back, and it's still word of mouth is still the number one way that people find us.
Yep, good sign.
Yeah, and back then it was so word of mouth, and the tradesmen were plentiful and high quality, and we were operating out of our house out at Zanzu, and the tradies would roll up. Somebody would have said, I'm sending my mate in. And they'd show up in our front yard, pull right up to the to the door. And that's how it was, word of mouth. And there was a lineup waiting to get those kind of opportunities. Yes. Yep.
So because 120 blokes, that was a lot.
Huge. Yeah,
that's a lot of people to be able to back. As you say, it's all in to move him. So was that done on? Were you chartering a plane to take them up? We're putting you in a car. You was just driving to Kidston?
No, Kidston did all the chartering.
Did all the stuff?
Yeah, and I mean, Kidston back then, they were really ahead of their time. They were week on, week off roster way back in the 80s.
Already?
Yeah, and they had flights going from Cairns, Mareeba, Atherton, Townsville. So, and they were daily flights. So they were a really, really, really big part of the mining sector. They left a big legacy. Placerdome.
Set it up quite well. It's just they try and turn it into a hydro
pumped hydro
system now. All the old dams and moving the water. Did you hear that, Paul? They basically let it run down through the turbines and then pump it back up into the top dam and then feed it all the way down.
Yeah, gotcha. Wow.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So is the mining industry still a big part of the business that we concentrate, or it is?
Yep. It's still a big part of the business. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think the thing that we offer is the ability to do both parts of it. So we can do the complete thing. We can do the workshop fabrication and then send a crew to site to do the installation or the project work or the shutdowns, and it works beautifully.
So in out of Cairns, or just Cairns as a whole, obviously you guys, is the mining an industry that Cairns can lean on a bit? Are there many other businesses around town, or is there a future for Cairns to be in the mining industry outside Dawsons?
Definitely.
In compared to the other, I guess Townsville and Mackay are probably ones that come to mind, but where's Cairns sit in all that as a whole?
I think that it's actually one of the things that led me to get involved with the Chamber of Commerce back in the day.
Okay.
I just was frustrated that people didn't understand that Cairns had this beating heart in the mining industry, and Cairns has always been a centre for mining. It's just that our tourism industry was so wildly successful.
Yeah, particularly in that era, right?
Yeah, exactly. That people, that's what they saw when they thought of Cairns. But Cairns actually has a larger manufacturing base than Townsville.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. And I think that, there was a tipping point with the mining boom in the early 2000s where, the mining companies had hubbed towards Townsville and they could no longer rely on Townsville to get all of their people. So Cairns was able to take advantage of that and start to elevate a little bit more. But the fact of the matter is that Cairns has a huge population of mining services companies and FIFO workers.
Yeah, it's funny because we don't, everyone thinks Mackay as the main FIFO place, right? And maybe it's just, I've got some mates who do what we do down in Mackay, and they say that's changed the fabric of that town.
Definitely.
But it doesn't seem to have had the same impact
because
here in Cairns.
Cairns
because
is
of
a
the
little bit
tourism.
more, Cairns
because
is
of
more
the
balanced.
diversity. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
The Cairns economy is it's got to be one of the most well placed in Queensland in terms of diversification.
Yeah.
Yep.
And have a look at the Atherton Tablelands.
Oh,
perfect.
untapped. Right?
Perfect for the combination of FIFO and something else.
Yep.
So I met a woman just the other week, and she's FIFO, but she also is involved in chocolate farming.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
So and coffee. So there's a lot of people who do that.
Yeah, but so in that sort of evolution, right? So it started, labour hire sort of built up. As you said, when you came back from Sydney, Dad had a similar conversation with my father, and it was the other way around. I rang Dad from New Guinea and said, I think I've had enough of this. You got a job for me? He said yes, which he didn't. But then you come back and it starts to grow, right?
Yeah.
You said the big across the road, the north side.
Yeah.
What sort of was it? Was it just that continual growth of labour hire that was driving that, or?
There was a couple of things, but there was one project that we had taken on that was quite transformational, and there was Mum and Dad had gotten this team of young guys around them, and they really had nothing to lose. So they were out there taking risks and taking on big jobs. And in late '98, they had become aware of a tank fabrication package associated with the Century Mine.
Right. Yeah.
And Bechtel were...
Yeah, Bechtel.
Bechtel.
Wow.
Massive international company.
Yeah.
Yes. Century Mine was at one point the world's third largest zinc mine.
Yeah.
So it's a very substantial operation. And Bechtel, massive multinational company, were running the construction. And somehow our estimator at the time won us the tank fabrication package. And that was a huge undertaking for a small company from Cairns. And it was just that, here I am with the bleep again. Yeah. They were a crew of young boys with big balls, and they said, we can do this. And so they were fabricating tank strakes in the scrub behind our workshop. We didn't have the laydown area. They just said, we can do this. So we built the tank packages for Century and Karumba and trucked them out there. And when we got out on site, the site fabrication went really well. And we happened to be on the spot when the much bigger company, Transfield. Yep. Transfield were the major contractor, and they had been doing the thickener floor of the thickeners. Yep. And the thickener floor failed. And some really good thinking, quick thinking by our estimator at the time and our project manager on the site, they went out and secured the steel that they needed to replace the thickener floor. And so when Bechtel said, help, we went, we've got the steel. Yeah. So it may, and that kind of performance under that kind of pressure. It really it set us up well for when that mine ticked over into the operational phase. And we started out there in the operational phase doing punch list items as it came online, and that was about the time I can remember I went out there just as we were finishing up doing the punch list before it became operational. And Transfield were the contractor there, and we were just this annoying little leftover from construction, and we just managed to hang on, doing punch list, then doing shutdown work, then doing little bits of mod squad work, and it was like the guys who were on site for us at that time, they were leftovers from our Kidston crew, and they'd transitioned across. A fantastic team of guys, and a couple of them, still work for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was the, not necessarily a number, but what was the scale of that contract, or that in portion to what you were doing, what Dawsons was doing at the time?
Oh, massive. Like that contract would have been by far the biggest job that we'd undertaken.
Yeah. So would it have been like 20, 30, would it have been 30% or something
30%
of your turnover?
Yeah. Yep.
Just on,
Yep.
we can have a crack, right? It's a similar story in Nepal from some other stuff we hear, right? Like, it's just that, what do we got to lose? Let's just have a go, right?
Yeah, and I actually wonder whether or not a lot of big companies would give a small company a go.
Mm-hmm.
And now. And, there have been some large projects that have been done within striking distance of Cairns companies in the last, decade or so, and Cairns companies haven't gotten a look in, and that's frustrated me. Because, if you don't get the opportunity, you can't continue to grow capacity. So as a region, we need we need actual commitment from companies that are developing projects in this neighbourhood to use local content. And I know that it's one of my big bugbears is that a lot of these approvals that companies get and the business cases that they provide around their local content seem to be just lip service, because when it all comes down to it, it's cheaper to go get it done overseas or to get it done down south and send it up. And that's frustrating because, back in the day, I know that NQEA built Weeper.
Correct.
We've got fantastic capacity, and we need to keep that work local.
And there's a couple of firms that we know of that have had to move headquarters to Brisbane to perceive to be a southern company to then win all the work, which they could have won from here. But it's this perception thing, right? That we're still a hick town up north, and
it's frustrating. Sad. And I know that we fabricate items here that we send down to Brisbane that then get shipped to New Guinea. Crazy.
Makes no sense, right? When we got a perfectly good airport here that's got a direct flight there, we've got cargo out and go to Singapore. Like, stuff can go anywhere. It's interesting, we had the conversation with Jimmy McIntosh and what they're doing and where they're able to ship it, because a lot of that infrastructure's here, but on scale they've then got to go and repeat that in a capital city everywhere.
It's a critical mass thing, and I think that the region will get there. It's just frustrating how long it takes. Sometimes you do need a transformational project that will help tick that over.
Well, think of all the fresh fruit and produce and whatever that gets shipped to Sydney to go through a market to come back to Cairns, or the beef that gets grown on the tablelands and out west. It doesn't make any sense, right? Anyway, so obviously with that project then going, and then I know your family being your family. Well, it's a matter of, we did that, we'll just keep doing, and then so it builds. At what point do you feel, so what was your role, when did you sort of move from running the labour hire to...
that was a very gradual process. But the thing with Century Mine was that when we stayed on to do the mod squad stuff, we were in a position to be able to tender for the light vehicle maintenance contract.
Right.
And we'd done light vehicles at Kidston and at Osborne, and that provided us with a foothold as a permanent contractor. And then it was a little bit after that this big contract came out, this significant contract came out to be the site-wide sole contractor. And at the time I was like, yep, we can do this. And funnily, I love throwing this back at the bloke who said this to me, because he worked for us until last year actually, and he's like, "Oh, Sharon, I think you're biting off more than you can chew. It might be a bit much for the family." I'm like, "Nah, mate, we got this."
We're good.
But that was at the point there, where we probably were able to then tick up and start playing with the big boys. And that was a national national tender process.
Yeah, right, okay.
And it was probably 3 months worth of tendering where we were put through externally facilitated workshops, and it was very funny actually. It was
Consultant speak.
Yeah, consultant speak, and it was me and a couple of blokes from here, and we were fronting up. And there's a lot of the big companies from down south, and they had teams. Like one of them had a private jet, and they jetted to Lawn Hill in their private jet to show up for their site contract meetings and site visit, and wearing suits. Like,
in Lawn Hill.
Yeah.
I still get up people when they walk in here with a tie or a jacket on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, that contract was transformational. It triggered us, it kicked us up into the big league, and that gave us some really good scale. And those shutdowns that we were doing out at Century Mine, 250 men.
Wow.
Yep.
3 to 4 times a year, and a base load of probably around 70 permanent employees.
Yep.
So that was at the point where we really started to get up a bit of a head of steam, and I transitioned during that process, during the light vehicle tender, during the big tender, into more of a role where I was at that end rather than filling the jobs. I was still doing a fair bit of the filling, but that was probably at the point where I started. And plus I started having too many kids to be doing
I was going to say, in the middle of that, there's 4 kids that have been raised over this period of time, right?
How many different trades do you run through Dawsons? So you've got the boiler makers, the diesel fitters, obviously. There's carpenters. Like, you obviously put on apprentices as well, I'd imagine, over time.
Yeah. Actually, I counted the other day, and I think we're up to 169 apprentices that we've completed.
Wow.
So, that's good. But in terms
across a vast range of trades.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got a database that manages, of course, all of the classifications of people.
We've moved away from the Rolodex now.
Moved away from the Rolodex. Yeah. And it's funny to have a look at the time at the kind of breadth of people that we're able to find for clients, but predominantly we're mechanical. We have got an electrical contractor's license, but that side of the business is very small.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, mechanical trades.
Yep.
And so just... sorry,
you go.
You go.
Okay, yep, okay. I just want to touch, because I have done a little bit of research, surprise.
He's had some time.
No, but I think this is interesting, and it's probably a little bit off what we're talking about, but there's a statement you've got on your website, the gender pay gap statement.
Oh, you found that?
Yeah. No, but it's
That's good, it's working.
Because you mentioned, it mentions there some statistics that in the industry, there's somewhere between 74 or 78%, I think, were the numbers of male, I guess, participants in the industry. Where do you guys sit in regards to that, bringing those percentages back and have more female participation, I guess, in the industry? Is that coming down? That's question number 1 I have for this. And then I do have a follow-up question, which I thought was quite cool that you're doing. Yeah.
Look, the mining industry is, and that's probably the bulk of our business. It's not the only thing we do, but it has completely changed in the time that I've been working in the business, and the opportunities are there for any woman who wants to have a go. And there is plenty of room for anyone who puts their hand up to have a go. So I think there's been massive progress that's been made, but the fact of the matter is that when it comes to trades, it takes 4 years to make a tradesman, and it's just going to take a while for those numbers
to increase.
Yep. But you can see a change. When I did my apprenticeship years ago, there was actually girls starting to do mechanical apprenticeships back then. That would have been, early 2000s. So it has been, and then that was very strange. Trust me, it was, you'd
early
never
90s
see
would have been.
No, go easy, I'm not that old. It's me, not you. Come on. It's. I guess it's over time. It's changing. But I remember that we had one female apprentice here. I think it was around 2000. But you also, my second part of that question is that what initiatives have you got in place at Dawsons specifically, because you to keep women in the workforce? Obviously, like yourself, you've had 4 kids, so that's going to keep happening. And, you know, women start and then they're having kids and they've got to go home. And, you know, it's quite difficult for an employer to, I guess, take on females to a certain extent because, you know, there's going to be all these changes. What initiatives have you guys sort of put in place to help in that area, to make it easier, I guess?
Look, I don't think we're doing anything groundbreaking, but I think the big advantage that we have is that even though we're probably a large company these days, we're still a small company.
Yep.
So we're still able to make exceptions. I think that a lot of big businesses, because they have so many employees, they have to be consistent.
Yep.
Whereas because we're a small company, we're like, oh, no problems, you know, take off early, go do that you need to do, or bring the kids in. I mean, it's just normal.
Yep.
You know, it has been normalised in our workplace.
Well, the dogs live at work anyway.
The dogs come to work.
Gotcha.
I came back to work immediately. I didn't have any time off with my 3 youngest kids because they came back to the office with me.
Yep.
And over the years, we've had, you know, other women in our business who have brought their kids in, brought their babies in, had them parked in the desk, you know, beside them. And, you know, we're trying to make that a normal part of the office. It's not it's not unusual for kids to come in. So and just allowing people, and it's not just women either, because these days, you know, a lot of the guys are wanting to be able to be present for those big moments. So if you need to go to your kids something or other at school, go.
Yep.
You know, we're not going to be frowning on anyone who wants to take on that parental responsibility. And I guess it's just having the flexibility to be able to do that. We're lucky.
Yeah, but I think
it's not easy.
It's not easy. But some of that flows from that culture of a family business anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because if it was good enough, you know, we have a similar attitude. If it was good enough for us, why is it not good enough? And it tends to come back in spades, right? Like people don't take it for granted. So when it happens, they actually, you don't have to worry about what the end result of this, because people at their core are good.
Yeah.
And if you treat them well, they respond the same way. I'm sure you found that.
Yeah, and it's one of the nicest things that we're now a multi-generational employer.
Yeah.
So we've got dads and daughters, dads and sons. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's at that trade level. I'd imagine when you were doing those negotiations for that national contract, there wasn't a lot of females at that table, right?
No.
Has it changed at that level?
Not as quickly as you would have thought.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely for a long time I was the only woman in the room.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I didn't notice it.
And how was that initially?
Because it's not much different to you.
How were you received initially? How did you deal with that? Was it? I mean, you're a strong woman, obviously, but how was that perceived initially when you'd step into a room, would do these deals, and it's a room full of blokes, and then there's a woman there? Did they treat you differently, or not? Or,
it's been overwhelmingly a really, really positive thing to be a woman in that environment for a couple of different levels. So despite not having a trade, I quite like technical things.
Yep.
And I have found that whenever I'm walking a job, and I have so much license to ask dumb questions. I mean,
no such thing as a dumb question.
Anyone
just
can ask.
You don't know the answer.
Exactly. Anyone can ask a dumb question, right?
Yeah.
But I think that it was probably an advantage to be a woman asking a dumb question because you're not expected to know.
Yep.
And I got so much information from just asking those dumb questions. I wonder if a bloke in my position would have been judged for asking a dumb question. He would have been expected to know. But it gave me so much opportunity to learn, and I never had any shortage of people happy to teach me, happy to explain something. I really enjoyed that. Probably it's not so much about being a woman, but I do know that I gave Lloyd, our GM, a lot of heart attacks with with some of the things that I said in meetings. But put that down to the dumb question. I got answers that I wanted. So I don't think I got treated any differently, but I don't know what they were saying about me behind my back. I don't
matter,
care.
right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Results are the results, right?
Yeah.
So if you look back now and reflect on the journey, do you think the being inside a family business where there's, I'm wondering, there's two things. One's North Queensland, like we sort of have this attitude of, and it's been consistent, so we're just, what do we got to lose? We'll have a go because we back ourselves to do stuff. But then that which I know your family's got in spades, with then in a family environment to be able to have the freedom to do that thing. Do you think that has played a positive or expedited the process?
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive. And I know, for a while there, when I first came on board with the company, I was like, oh, wow, we're at this difficult size. On the one hand, we're up against these big companies like the Transfields and the Monadelphous, and, we can't compete.
Yep.
They're way too big, way too well-resourced for us to compete, but that's what we're expected to compete against. And on the other hand, we've got the guy with the dog and the welder in the back of his ute eating our lunch.
Yeah.
Undercutting us. So
Yeah.
we're at this awkward size. But actually what it was a massive competitive advantage, because we are actually at that perfect size now where we're big enough to take on those jobs. We've got the scale, and we did back then as well.
Yeah.
We've got the ability to deliver at a technical level, and we've got a financial backing to do the big jobs.
Yep.
But we're actually small enough to be able to make really quick decisions. And even dealing with those big multinational mining companies, they like being able to eyeball the owner across the table. Yep. And it's crazy, but that's something that I initially was meing about, and then quickly I realised this is a massive advantage.
Yeah. Because the person who actually has got the
skin in the game
and making the decision is making the decision.
Yep. You're not waiting for a board approval. You're not dealing with somebody in a faraway office. You're actually sitting across the table from the decision makers. And, we've got flexibility to do things that maybe big companies can't. They're a bit unwieldy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But has there been challenges along the way? I mean, I talk about our family business. One of the benefits of the credit that I give Dad is he sort of let us just do what we needed to do and got out of our way, right? And so we made some mistakes, but he let us make mistakes that weren't going to be terminal, because you've got to figure that stuff, right? But not every family business that I know or that I've had experience with has that same sort of... How has that dynamic worked, and is it been that sort of each of you that work there have that sort of different skill set and have just found your own groove, or how's that?
We must have been really lucky, I reckon, because same thing.
Yeah.
So Mum and Dad just got out of the way.
Yep.
And different skill sets between us, because my brother's involved as well. And we've by and large just trusted each other to, Yeah. It's honestly, I'm touching wood, because I know that not every family is like that. And then I often reflect on the family business side of things, not only from a client perspective, but from an employee perspective, because it is a different thing to be working with a family business, and it's not all beer and Skittles for the employees. Holy moly.
No, it's not.
Dealing with the family, I know we're a pain in the ass.
Yeah. And I can say some stuff to him that I wouldn't get away with, but they hear that and they think, it's families are families, right?
Yeah. So significant upsides, and the upsides by far and away outweigh the downsides.
And the next generation is there. I know you've sent Georgia out on site.
Yeah, my eldest daughter.
Filling some stuff.
Yeah, my eldest daughter's out on a mine site at the moment. But look, we've got quite a few in the next generation, and I guess it's the same thing that my brother and I faced, is that there's no guarantees, and the business is way too big to have any kind of expectation about walking into a role because of what your last name is.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting segue on a question I was going to ask. At what point do you sort of look back and go, the business is now, I mean, it was always in growth mode, right? Because you were always trying, but it gets to a point where you reach that critical mass where growing doesn't become an option anymore. It becomes a necessity to maintain existence, right? Because if you don't grow, you shrink and it blows up. What do you sort of have can you look back and think about when that maybe, was that the Century gig, or was it when we got the full-time gig, and do you think you changed, or did you have to adapt, or did you notice it?
Probably didn't notice it. It's like the old boiling frog, right?
Yeah.
But we have charted the key milestones in the company's history against, the growth of the company, and it's been interesting to see what those points are, what the inflection points are, and we're definitely still looking for growth. We've still got growth there, but it's a necessity.
Yeah, because
it just happened all of a sudden.
Yeah.
What are the big picture plans looking ahead, if any, Sharon? Anything that you guys are looking to get into or do differently, or sort of brainstormed or done anything like that? Some things that you've thought of but just thrown off the shelf and said, nah, we won't do that?
We're always doing that. And it's funny because we don't do very formal goal setting. Mm-hmm. And, we're running a very informal, flat management structure. We're not big on sitting down and doing massive strategy days.
Yep.
But funnily enough, we were reflecting as a management team, I don't know, could have been the other month, could have been the other year, where we had sat down and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to grow in this sector, this sector, this sector. Yeah. And then we'd had the talk about it. Yep, righto, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go. And then, I don't know, accidentally we got there. So we looked back and went, hey, shit, those things that we said we were going to do, look at that, we've done them.
It's amazing.
It's funny, isn't it? We talk about that a bit, like we do it to a certain extent, but the fact that you put some mental energy into doing it and then something in your brain says, well, we're just going to, it's going to happen now.
Yeah.
And it's so important to do that work. Have you noticed, though, as the businesses got bigger and as you bring on the different generations, that the younger generations want to know something more about what's going on? Has it become a bit more difficult? I talk to some people and they find that the younger generation is starting to want to know, well, what are we doing and where are we going and where do I fit into this process? Is that played out?
Probably that's a downside of
the flatness.
The flatness is that you're setting these goals and then assuming that you're having these informal conversations in the hallways or at lunch or smoko breaks or whatever, and that everyone's along with the journey. But we're actually a big company now in terms of numbers, and so it's difficult to get that face time to bring people along.
Yep.
So that is definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
And then as far as working, like, the employment market is very, very different.
Yes.
To it's changing all the time, of course, but it light years away from what it was back in the early 2000s, late 1990s.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And have you had to change any of your employment practices or anything? It just happens naturally, or?
Oh, we're definitely always trying to make sure. So we've always said as a business that we've got two sets of clients. So we've got the actual people that we're building, maintaining, or whatever we're doing for those clients.
Yep.
But equally, if not more important, are the blokes and the women that are working for us. Yep. Because unless we're treating them like clients and giving them the employment experience that they need, then we've got no business.
Yeah.
So we've always tried to make sure that we're providing a really good employment experience in whatever capacity we're touching people.
Yeah.
So, we're definitely changing things. And I think that overall people require a lot more management. So back in the day when Mum was using her little Rolodex system, it'd be a phone call saying, hey, mate, get on the plane 4 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yep.
Mate would show up on the plane with a tool bag. He'd know what was required. Meant to be in there. Get to site.
You didn't have a two-lay induction toolbox morning.
Oh, my God, yeah. So the runway to get somebody onto a job site these days is massive. Yeah. So it requires a lot more touching. I'm making generalisations here, but people do need a lot lot more management.
Which also then means that you've got to employ people with that skill set to be able to do that, right? Yeah. So that, as bureaucracy takes over.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive, the administrative burden on just trying, before you even strike a blow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharon, can I just touch on, earlier in the intro, as Jason said, more Oz than Julia Roberts, woman with many hats. But you did mention earlier you're involved with the Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
And you've been involved and are involved with quite a number of organisations over time, Ports North, Advanced Cairns.
Yep.
I think currently Racing Queensland, maybe currently.
Yep.
So still currently?
Yep.
So what? Why do you put yourself into that? I mean, you're a single mother with 4 kids. You've got all that going on. You're running a large business. Then you decide to throw these hats on into these other organisations. What pushes you there, or what gives you the drive to do that?
Oh, there's got to be something there that I feel like I'm contributing towards. So with the Chamber of Commerce, it was really clear that I thought we needed to elevate Cairns and our profile within industries other than tourism.
Yep.
So that's what got me involved there. And then probably advanced cans was a little bit of a segue from that.
Yep.
And when I was approached to see if I was interested in applying for Ports North, similar thing. So this is an organisation that's a focal point for economic development in North Queensland. And I found that interesting. And, that was great to be a part of that. And then same with Racing Queensland. So when I was asked to, if I wanted to put myself forward for Racing Queensland, I was like, racing is huge in terms of connecting people. Yeah. And it's a massive industry in itself.
Yeah. Enormous.
So, yeah.
So how did that one come about? I understand the other three with your association with Dawson Cairns. How did Racing Queensland come about?
Racing Queensland was...
Have you always been heavily involved in racing outside of,
Oh, yeah, I love going to the track.
Yeah. Love dressing up and going to the races.
100%.
Racing Queensland was a beautiful point in time where they had restructured the board. The organisation, was broken and it was being rebuilt with an independent board, and so it needed 3 code directors. So thoroughbred, thoroughbred, the dogs and the trotters. Yep. And then it needed 4 independent directors. And when they looked at the composition of the independent directors, they wanted somebody from, they wanted regional representation, and ideally a bit of female. Just to balance, gender balance. So, and the fact that I'd had previous experience on boards, and I don't know who put my name forward for that. No, I don't know, but I went through an interview process and...
rightio.
And so that's been... Because I remember having a conversation with you at the time.
No, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
You've been a part of that, so at some point... I know it's at a strategic level, but you've got to have involvement. I know there's been some challenges through that. But there's been massive transformation in that organisation over the last, whatever long, certainly the last half a dozen years. It's unbelievably different to what it was.
Yep. Been fantastic. And I think the other thing is as well is that, I like being involved in things where I feel like I have an interest.
Yep.
And I can play a part in something bigger. But also it's not all altruistic, right? Because I'm in a family business and I'm always worried about being the monkey at the top of the tree.
Yep.
And no one, you're in that family business, you're wondering, am I actually, do I act? So when I sit around a boardroom table with people who come from all sorts of different walks of life and the experiences they have, I find it hugely beneficial from a learning point of view. I'm looking at these people and, wow, what they're bringing to the table. It's been really, really good for me as well. So I get way more than I give, I think, in those roles, because I'm the opportunity to, express ideas and bounce things off people who have got, way more experience in different circles and,
And do you find, I know I certainly did in the couple of roles that I was lucky enough to do, that you learn some skills, particularly for me, it was in the areas of governance and stuff, which you can bring back into an organisation that isn't family business. You're not normally thinking about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because, as you say, it's pretty flat. As long as at some level we agree that that's the path we're going to go, it doesn't really matter what the government structure is. We just get on and get it done.
Yeah.
But you get to a point where you've got to be a bit better than that, right? Has that been something?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And so I, heavily... there's a sliding scale, right? So you have a look at Ports North and here, Dawson's probably here. My arms are a long way apart here. So somewhere on the sliding scale, is where your business is going to fit. And so you don't necessarily want to turn Dawson's into a government corporation, but there are definitely learnings that I took away from that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and makes the place a better place.
Yeah. No, so I hope that I've contributed something, but I know that I feel like I've gained way more than I've given.
And do you feel, my perception from the outside is none of these have ever been about the title that came with it. It's been about self-development. It's about learning. And some people have asked, and I've spoken to a few people, like we spoke to James, it was a similar thing. He got involved initially because he wanted to be able to help build the thing that he was doing, and then figured that he got so much more out of that when the next person asked, he just said yes, right? And developed, and more people should be encouraged to, when the opportunity comes up, to not be scared by it and just, you never know what you know.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that's probably been one of the things, is that maybe I've just been always too stupid to be scared. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no worries. I'll give that a go.
Let me ask some more dumb questions. That's the go.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking, one of the other things that we've asked people who've come on with you, but can you think, if you were talking to a younger Sharon, right, what is there anything that you would say to her about maybe some things you would do or you would have done quicker, or if it's, maybe not a younger Sharon, but someone else that's out there listening going, apart from just, if you think you can do it, just back yourself to do it.
Yes.
Which seems to be overpowering for most people. Is there any other little tips or pearls of wisdom you can share, you think?
I often, I don't often think about what I would tell myself because I'm pretty happy with where I am, right? Every mistake I've made and every experience has led me to be here. I'm really happy. It's good. But if I could say something to anyone younger, it's just don't be afraid to give it a go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And actually have more fun. But probably I would tell my younger self, have more fun along the way because I was very, very serious.
Yep.
I was really serious because, I was quite, yeah.
It's funny, I look back at my years at uni and think, I could have done a lot less and still ended up here.
Yeah, I should have had more fun.
Yeah, correct. No, and I'm not saying I didn't have fun, but I look back and go, wow, I could have,
You're grown up you're grown up for a really long time, and this is probably where I'm trying to get through to my kids is that, it's about balance. And any young person, it's about balance. And you've got your entire life to be grown up.
And if you're not enjoying it, there's probably something else going on. And
yes.
life's too short to be stuck thinking, why am I doing this?
Well, nothing that you do is forever, is it?
No.
You've got the option at any point in time to go, you know what, I'm not happy where I am. I'm not enjoying this anymore. I'm going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one's stopping you other than you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a great thing you said for the young ones is just to get out and have a go. And that's overwhelming with everyone we speak to is, they've had a go, and it's actually all right to have a go and it not work as well.
It's all right.
That's okay.
It's all right to not have a plan as well.
Yeah.
It's all right to not have a plan, and I think that provides a level of openness to what comes along. I wonder if people who set out, and I envy people who know exactly what they want to do in life. There's a real peace to that, having that singularity, but also, I think that if you are so focused on one thing, maybe you're closing yourself off to seeing the other opportunities as they float past you.
Yep.
So I think that it's okay not to have a plan, and it's okay to not have the rest of your life mapped out because you're leaving yourself open to grab things as they come past. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and at 20, 21, 25, 30, 35, how many people in this day and age start the job that they finish in, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, thinking back, to ancient times when we were at school, a lot of these jobs that people are doing now didn't even exist.
Correct.
We couldn't have known what these jobs were, and it's going to be the same for this generation as well. So, the angst, and I've got kids at the moment who are in the throes of, school and university, and there's a lot of pressure, perceived pressure on them to work something out now for the rest of their lives. I'm like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just pick something, do something, and you don't know where that's going to lead you.
Yeah, I said to my kids, I'm lucky enough at this stage they've all ended up working in what they studied in, but they weren't sure at the time. I said, uni for me, for a period of time I used to employ in what we do. I used to employ people with a university degree. I didn't actually care what it was. I just cared that they finished. Because uni teaches you to learn.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Right? And you don't get through uni with someone making sure you turn up. You've got to do it for yourself, right?
Yep.
And so there's a sense of achievement in that. And if you can do that, then you can pretty much do anything, right?
Of course. Yeah, if you're prepared to learn and ask dumb questions.
Yeah, correct. So just to quickly touch on that and that theme of that, how did you end up in London? Was that something you always wanted to do?
I always wanted to do that. My mum, actually.
Yeah?
I always wanted to travel, and it was a big thing, right? My parents were graduates from Trinity Bay.
Yep.
My dad was lucky to graduate because he had a big falling out with one of the teachers. Actually, he punched a teacher towards the end of year 10, and his mum had to beg for him to be allowed to graduate. Anyway, so they both left school in year 10, which was normal back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dad went on to do his apprenticeship at NQEA, and Mum went into a job with Chandler's in Lake Street.
Oh, just down here?
Yeah, right about where we have coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So So, that was my parents' horizons.
Mm-hmm.
So I was and when I was going through school, I wasn't going to leave in year 10 because in about, the 80s when I was coming through, it became more common for people to go through to year 12.
Yep.
Not common for my parents. I was the first female. I'm one of 17 grandchildren on my mum's side, and I was the first female to finish year 12.
Wow.
And I was the second of the 17 to go to uni. So going on to year 12 wasn't a thing in either of my parents' families. And my mum, I remember nagging her in year 10, and my parents had no money. They were just really hard workers. They had no money. And I said to Mum, when I finish year 12, I'll be 18 and you'll be just about 30, on the tail end of 35, and we'll be old enough to go on a Kentucky tour together.
What did Val say to that?
And she said, yeah, okay. Like, she had no money. She was making promises she couldn't keep. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
and then I was going to uni, and she was like, oh, well, I'm like, well, when I finish uni, maybe we can, go travelling together. And she was like, yeah. Still had no money. Yep, yeah. Finished uni and, started working, and she goes, okay, well, now you can go yourself. and just lucky that, my boyfriend at the time, and we had some friends from school who had, also ended up at school and early uni work who had ended up in London, and I was always going to go. I was always going to do that Kentucky tour, and John just came along with me. And once we got over there, I was staying. Had my working visa all worked out. Yeah, it was great. Best thing I ever did.
I mean, it's very common now, but back then it wasn't hugely common, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're the same age. And I mean, my sister did it, and she's 7 years younger than me, and it seems like everybody from about her age down went and spent 2 years in Europe or London or whatever. But it was a big thing back then. Like, it was a long flight. It was you're on the other side of the world and no internet. And
no internet. Yep, jumped on Garuda.
Garuda.
I was one seat in front of the smoking section.
The good old days.
Yep, the chain smoked all the way to Europe. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I'd landed in London, no phones, no nothing. It was, telling that to kids now, no phones. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
It's funny.
But it was great, It was absolutely, I cannot tell people long enough and loud enough that I think that it's such a good thing for Australian kids to get out and do travel. Doesn't matter where you go, just get out of Australia and go and have a look at the rest of the world. And you come back here with different ideas, and just I think you really appreciate how lucky we are. We won the lottery in life.
Yeah, correct. We've got what we've got.
Oh my God! And North Queensland.
Oh, how good is it?
Yep.
Like,
absolutely.
Born and bred, like you wouldn't think. But then you get to. It always amazes me when I travel, and particularly in Europe, you go there and there's cities that are, in modern terms, 5 and 6 times older than Australia, right? It's insane, right? Just spend some time in Bruges because you insisted that we should go to Bruges, and man, what a town that is. But talk about history.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And from an engineering perspective.
Oh, and it's still there, right?
Wow.
All that water underneath.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yep. So, going to, I don't know what got into my head, but it was from a very young age, and I've always enjoyed history. I studied history at uni.
I saw that.
Yeah, so I was always going to go travelling.
Got to study something in an arts degree of
That's
purpose, right?
exactly right, yeah. History, English and politics. I did triple major.
I saw that. And then did a primary dip ed, right?
Yeah.
Does that go together?
Yeah. Oh, no, secondary.
Oh, is it secondary?
Yeah. I taught at Smithfield. I went back to
Did you actually? I didn't even know that. I knew that you did it, but I didn't know that you actually taught.
Yeah, there were kids there that were still, that were in year 8 or 9 or something when I was in year 12, and I went back and I was teaching them. Angela Toppin gave me my first job.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Far out.
If you ever need somebody to invade a small nation, you put Angela in charge. That's done.
Oh wow! Well, that is Sharon. Yeah. It's been a real pleasure to chat. It's been an enjoyable conversation. There's been lots of fun. It always is to be able to just talk with people who've got something to share, and you always are in spades have stuff to share. And
thank you. I'm enjoying being 30 wonderful.
It's been great. So it's 35 years, is it, Dawson's? Like 35 years.
You know what?
Now?
I keep forgetting to count. I reckon we're 37.
37. So 50 is not far away.
Not far away at all. You know how fast time goes when you get to 37.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, but awesome. It's amazing. It does not feel that, it doesn't feel long at all, and time
Yep.
becomes so elastic. It's a conversation that I had the other day, but actually it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I think about the amazing people that we've got working for us who have been working for us
Yep.
for 27 years. And Tracy has been with us, you know, Tracy Brittingham has been with us since, 1991.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
That's excellent.
Well, it's funny,
Crazy.
given that you're 31 and you've been working for Dawsons for 26, it's amazing how much you've achieved starting at 5.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's been excellent. Thank you very much for coming in, Sharon.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you. Yes.
All right, so we hope you enjoyed it. If you got any comments, shoot us a note, drop us a note on the Wealth Radar Facebook page, and we'll see you next time. And thanks again. It's been great fun.
Thank you.
See you later.
See ya.
This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the information contained is of a general nature and may not be relevant to your particular circumstances. The circumstances of each investor are different, and you should seek advice from a professional financial advisor who can consider if particular strategies and products are right for you. In all instances where information is based on historical performance, it is important to understand this is not a reliable indicator of future performance. You should not rely on any material on this podcast to make investment decisions and should seek professional advice.